Discover the amazing lives of London's 19th century crawlers, transformative stories exposed. Clara Jenkins sat alone in the shadowy corners of the library, piles of dusty diaries and yellowed letters sprawled before her like ancient relics. The flickering light from a nearby lamp barely illuminated the words that whispered across the pages, inviting her into a world of struggle and triumph. She could almost hear the hushed voices of the crawlers calling to her, street vendors who fought societal scorn with relentless spirit to carve their destinies amidst poverty. The thrill of discovery surged within her, yet the suffocating expectations of her family loomed larger than the grand tales of resilience she so desperately wanted to tell. A lawyer. That's what her parents saw when they looked at her. Stability, respect, success. That vision had been painted vividly since her childhood. Each time Clara brought home her academic ribbons, their smiles plastered on their faces felt like shackles tightened around her ambitions. Every congratulatory embrace amplified the internal battle raging within, to honor their dreams or to chase her own. Her fingers trembled over a diary, recounting how one crawler's ingenuity transformed a failed venture into a thriving street cart. Clara's chest tightened. Could she ever replicate such courage? Before she could dive deeper, the cold grip of doubt seeped in. What if she was wasting her time? What if the elitist circles of academia dismissed her passion project entirely? Imagine the ridicule, the sneers from the very colleagues she wished to impress. They believed that the stories of the lower classes were nothing more than mere sentiments, below the gravitas of serious historical scholarship. Her heart raced in fear, chasing away the validation she yearned for. Could she vanish into obscurity for daring to make their struggles heard? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The walls felt like they were closing in as Clara plotted her course. She needed guidance, someone to lift this weight of skepticism from her shoulders. The thought of reaching out to Dr. Mitchell, the retired professor known for his unyielding support of innovative ideas, flickered in and out of her mind like a strobe light. What if he turned her away? Or worse, what if he aligned with her critics and quelled her spirit before it even had a chance to soar? The thought twisted her insides, a knot of anxiety tightening with each passing moment. As days melted into nights of relentless preparation, Clara peered into her own reflection, seeing the mounting tension in her eyes. The upcoming academic conference felt like a battleground where her dreams would be scrutinized. It was supposed to be her moment, but instead it loomed before her like an insurmountable wall. Just when she thought she had a grasp on her identity, a revelation upended everything. Her own lineage traced back to the struggles of the crawlers. The emotions tumbled like a chaotic wave, pride intermingled with fear. What did it mean to carry such a legacy while standing under the weight of her family's expectations? The air grew thick with anticipation as Clara approached the conference podium, heart racing against the palpable silence that engulfed the room. She could almost feel the eyes of academia weighing her down, seeking to pry into the depths of her spirit. This was not merely an academic presentation, it was her reckoning. Would she stand boldly in her truth, or would fear once more shrink her voice into submission? As she caught her breath, ready to step into the spotlight, an overwhelming question loomed. Who would emerge from the shadows? The ambitious girl burdened by expectations, or the courageous historian ready to reclaim her narrative? Clara stood at the podium, her heart pounding with a ferocity that echoed in the silence of the room. The expectation was stifling, drawing her deeper into a whirlpool of doubt. She glanced at the attendees scattered before her, familiar faces and strangers alike, all seeking expertise from someone they deemed worthy. But who was she, really? A voice fought to rise within her, yet the conflicting ghost of her family's aspirations wrapped tighter around her throat. She clenched her fists, the tendons in her arms taut with the need for control. This was her moment to shatter expectations, both her own and those imposed by others. Before she could think twice, the words surged forth. "Today I will tell you the stories of the crawlers." The phrase hung in the air, shocking her into realization. The narrative she intended to share was steeped in her blood, her essence. It was time to own her voice. The clock ticked mercilessly as she spoke, recounting tales of resilience, tenacity, and survival. Her voice, initially trembling, gained momentum. Each anecdote of a crawler resonated with her inner narrative. While recounting their struggles, Clara could feel the facade of the lawyer her parents envisioned begin to crack. She was not merely retelling history. She was connecting the past to her personal struggle, navigating the very expectations that threatened to engulf her. But as she looked up, she caught sight of a familiar figure, Dr. Mitchell, his brow furrowed in a semblance of concern. The fear heightened within her. What did he see? Was he judging her choice to venture into the tales of those society abandoned? Swallowing hard, she forged ahead, identifying the societal implications of these struggles and their relevance to current issues, and linking them to her own fight against her family's narrow definition of success. But as she looked up, she caught sight of a familiar figure, Dr. Mitchell, his brow furrowed in a semblance of concern. The fear heightened within her. What did he see? Was he judging her choice to venture into the tales of those society abandoned? Swallowing hard, she forged ahead, identifying the societal implications of these struggles and their relevance to her own fight against her family's narrow definition of success. The presentation began to blend into a cathartic experience. Clara spoke of failure transformed into triumph. She articulated the creativity of the crawlers, their innovation in the face of relentless adversity. With every word, a weight lifted. The stories of those who had to battle for every scrap of dignity intertwined beautifully with her own journey toward self-acceptance. She was no longer just an academic. She was a bridge between past and present, an advocate for the voices that too often remained unheard. Yet, as Clara reached the final words of her presentation, a chilling silence fell. Eyes set firmly on her. Dr. Mitchell's expression remained inscrutable, and the audience began to murmur. Heart racing wildly, she couldn't decipher their reactions. Were they engaged or apprehensive? She recalled her initial fear of ridicule, and doubt crept back in like a shadow. Had she truly made an impact, or had she merely served to highlight her own shortcomings? As the first hand slowly raised for a question, Clara felt the ground shift beneath her. The inquiry posed related to the legitimacy of her work, the authenticity with which she had drawn connections. It felt like a gauntlet thrown, and her insides twisted in a furious response. Would she remain on the defensive, or would she take the moment to dig deeper, to embrace the authenticity that had initially startled her? Facing the skepticism mirrored in the audience, she wondered, could she silence the critics while staying true to the fragile voice she had just begun to cultivate? Clara inhaled deeply, resolved to walk through fire rather than retreat. This was about more than just her passion. It was a commitment to every storyteller who had been lost to history. The moment was electric, charged with potential and the stark reality of self-discovery. But as she leaned into her answer, something unexpected flickered in Dr. Mitchell's eyes. Something akin to recognition, maybe even approval. She would have to confront her fears and make her case, but perhaps she wasn't alone in this after all. An inner strength began to bubble, propelling her forward. And just as she was about to respond, a realization struck. The next steps in her journey hinged on the reception of the crowd. Would it guide her towards the validation she craved, or push her to further question the boundaries of her own ambition? In that moment, everything hung in the balance, both her future and the essence of her identity. Clara's heart thundered in her chest as she prepared to answer the question, her breath shallow and rapid. The murmurs of the audience faded into a distant buzz as she focused on her thoughts. The inquiry about legitimacy reeked of skepticism, and she sensed the weight of its implications. It wasn't just about her presentation, it was a challenge to her authenticity, her very purpose in this endeavor. She had uncovered the stories of the crawlers to not only shine a light on their struggles, but to also affirm her. Owned as valuable in this world that often silenced the marginalized. The gaze of Dr. Mitchell rested on her, an anchor in this swirling vortex. Facing his expression, she glimpsed potential understanding, but it was still daunting. What did he genuinely think? Did he believe her work had merit? The awareness of being scrutinized was a double-edged sword, but it reminded her of her growth. Clara understood now that she had the power to redefine her narrative, not just for herself, but for the lives she had painted in her tales. Taking a moment, she soaked in the silence, letting it envelop her like a protective shroud. "I appreciate your concern," she began, voice steadier than before. To question authenticity isn't just valid, it's necessary. These stories are not merely research data. They are my truth, interwoven with personal experiences that shape societal perceptions. The words poured out, laced with conviction. She was no longer an uncertain vessel. She was the very vessel of their truths. As she continued talking, she caught snippets of expressions from the audience. Some heads nodded slowly, as if agreeing, while others remained skeptical. Her conviction wavered for a brief moment. Doubt was a frequent companion, one she was becoming acquainted with. But rather than succumb, she pressed on unapologetically, shifting the lens to how the crawler's resilience mirrored her own struggles with familial expectations and societal definitions of success. Every crawler faced a multitude of challenges, Clara noted, her tone shifting to one of fervor. Their stories echo not only in the past, but also in contemporary narratives. I can't help but see reflections of those journeys within my own, struggling against the predefined paths set by my family. She was surprised by the sudden clarity. In that moment of honesty, she mapped her existence alongside theirs. It was a raw admission, real and vulnerable. The atmosphere changed palpably, and she sensed a new alignment with her audience, moments of connection escalating with every word. Yet still, the uncertainty loomed. Would one insightful moment during her speech be enough to shatter a lifetime of self-doubt? She had walked into this room hoping to make an impact, and now she wondered if she might indeed achieve what she sought. As she finished her answer, the air around her crackled with anticipation. Clara cast a glance towards Dr. Mitchell, seeking a glimmer of feedback. His gaze had softened, an unmistakable flicker of respect igniting within it. Hope surged, but it was quickly followed by anxiety. What if this respect was fleeting? What if, once the applause faded, she returned to obscurity, battling the same old fears? Before she could spiral deeper into those thoughts, the audience responded. Questions continued to flow, but increasingly they became more reflective, probing the intersection of adversity and innovation. Clara felt carried by that exchange. Each discussion thread pulled her further out of her self-imposed shadows. She reveled in the dialogue, dissecting responses with newfound clarity that had grown from her personal revelations. In the aftermath, as she closed her presentation, a sense of accomplishment swelled within her. Even if she didn't achieve universal validation, she had planted a seed of her journey. As the crowd began to disperse, Clara couldn't shake off the sense of urgency within her. There was still work to be done, connections to be deepened, both within herself and in her advocacy. Emerging from the podium, a familiar figure approached her through the dissipating crowd. It was Dr. Mitchell, and the look he wore held more than just professional assessment. There seemed to be an underlying challenge in his eyes. The exchange that lay ahead could either solidify her newfound confidence or expose deeper vulnerability. "Clara," he called, and her breath quickened anew. "There's something I believe we need to discuss, something important for your ongoing work." The weight of those words hung ominously in the air, pregnant with both possibility and uncertainty. She stood at the precipice of a new revelation, questioning what this conversation might reveal about her journey and her future. Clara faced Dr. Mitchell, her heart racing as his presence loomed larger than life. She felt the familiar cocktail of eagerness and apprehension swirl within her. There was an unspoken weight to his gaze, a pressure that hinted at secrets and revelations yet to come. She had just taken a significant leap by sharing her journey, and now she stood at the brink of yet another pivotal moment. "Thank you for your insights today," Dr. Mitchell began, his tone measured. "Your perspective on the crawlers intertwining with your experiences is commendable, but I sense there's more beneath the surface, perhaps something you're hesitating to reveal." His words pierced through her, igniting a flurry of thoughts. What could he possibly know? A defensive instinct rose within her. Did he perceive the cracks in her facade that she fought so hard to conceal? The notion that he might see through her bravado left her teetering on the edge of vulnerability. "I'm dedicated to this work," Clara asserted, a note of defiance edging into her voice. "But I know comparing my struggles to theirs might come across as naive. It's not about overshadowing their stories. It's about intertwining my fight with theirs. They deserve their platform." "Exactly," he replied, unwavering. "But what about your platform? You possess an authenticity that resonates, and I fear you're still battling the feeling that your voice is secondary. You need to recognize the power you hold, not only for yourself, but as a representative of those whose narratives are often lost." His challenge pushed against her defenses, and she found herself wrestling with her internal narrative. Power? Did she really have it after all this time spent submerged in self-doubt? The feeling was intoxicating, yet terrifying. For years, she had been conditioned to downplay her experiences, to shrink back from the spotlight in favor of others. Clara could almost hear the echoes of her family's disapproval when she deviated from their expectations. "Clara," continued, breaking her reverie, "you have a genuine choice to make. You can choose to uplift others while fully embracing your story, or you can retreat back into the shadows. The work we're discussing is a path to uncovering the truth behind so many struggles, but it requires you to stand firm in your identity." She opened her mouth to respond but faltered. A clarity began to seep into her consciousness. It was as if the layers of self-imposed limitations were peeling away to reveal something brighter beneath. What if she accepted the truth of herself as much as she championed that of the crawlers? It was a revelation that could shift the entire foundation of her efforts. What would happen if she dared to claim her space in this conversation? Would she finally break free from the shackles of self-doubt? The thought was both liberating and daunting, echoing in her mind like a drum, spurring her deeper into contemplation. "Listen closely," Dr. Mitchell said, breaking her thoughts once more. "There's an opportunity approaching that can amplify your voice even further, but it hinges on your willingness to stand unshielded. It's a challenge that demands risk, But if you're willing, I believe it could transform how you see your role in this ongoing narrative. A breath caught in Clara's throat. Transformation? Risk? The notions entwined with bursts of excitement and dread. Could she really step into that uncertain territory? The gravity of her decision settled heavily upon her. I want you to consider what this means for you, Dr. Mitchell added, a note of encouragement in his tone. I'll be here to support you, but ultimately the choice is yours to make. Clara nodded, her mind racing through the implications. She could see the horizon of possibilities opening before her, each path leading toward a different version of herself. The question loomed large. Which Clara would she allow to step forward? As she contemplated her next move, the bustling crowd became a faint echo. This could be a moment of monumental change, not just for the crawlers, but for her as well. Let's discuss the opportunity in detail, Dr. Mitchell suggested, sensing the storm of thoughts swirling within her. Clara braced herself, feeling the foundation she stood upon shift beneath her feet. What lay ahead represented not just a crossroads, but the opening of a door she had feared to approach. Her gut twisted with anticipation and determination as she prepared to step forward into the haze of uncertainty, ready to confront the challenges of her evolving identity. And as she did, she caught herself questioning who she truly was beneath all the layers she wore. Was this the moment she would finally transcend doubt and embrace both her struggles and her triumphs? The prospect was thrilling, but with it came the fear of the unknown. What awaited her on the other side? Clara's pulse quickened. With trepidation, yearning to know what revelations lay just beyond her hesitations, poised to emerge into the light. The weight of Dr. Mitchell's words lingered in the air, casting a shadow over Clara's resolve as they engaged in deeper discussion. Their conversation morphed into a strategy session, with her at the center of every decision laid bare before them. Clara's thoughts raced as each idea was woven into a grand vision, one where she no longer played a subordinate role, but became the architect of her narrative. Imagine hosting a series of discussions, Dr. Mitchell proposed, enthusiasm threading through his voice. Sessions where you invite experts to explore topics that resonate deeply with your journey, showcasing both the crawler's stories and your own. You can illuminate the intersections in ways that inspire and uplift. Clara's heart quickened at the notion. Could she really spearhead such an initiative? It felt like standing on a precipice, her instincts screaming at her to retreat, yet something deeper beckoned her forward, coaxing her to embrace the risk. "And what about the people you would bring in?" Clara interjected, envisioning the community of voices she could gather. Experts who could articulate the nuances of our struggles, shedding light on aspects that are often overshadowed by statistics and media representations. "Exactly," Dr. Mitchell replied, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "This is an opportunity for you to curate a platform that reflects authenticity. It's your voice, your vision." Clara's mind raced, images of passionate discussions, shared stories, and the potential for meaningful connections filled her thoughts. But beneath the excitement lurked streams of doubt. Could the world really handle her unfiltered truth? Would her insights resonate with others, or would they be dismissed as yet another voice in a crowded landscape? Embracing your perspective won't come without pushback, Dr. Mitchell warned, perceptively sensing her internal conflicts. You'll face skepticism and perhaps criticism, but this is where you need to harness your authenticity. There's power in standing your ground. As his words sank in, Clara suddenly felt the ground beneath her shift dramatically. The prospect of opposition no longer paralyzed her. Instead, it ignited a defiance she hadn't known existed. Every instance of self-doubt now transformed into a rallying cry to reclaim her narrative. "What if I commit to this and I fail?" she asked, considering the stakes involved. The voice of her past echoed through her, warning, questioning, undermining. "But what if you succeed?" he countered, an insistence buried in his challenge. "This isn't solely about you. It's about those who have felt unseen. Your success could illuminate an entire narrative that has long been in shadow." The notion unfurled within her like a blossom breaking through hardened soil. Clara could be that bridge, one that connected struggles into shared movements, allowing for transformation and growth. The past no longer defined her. It could empower her to shape the future instead. "I need to prepare myself," she acknowledged, the determination firming her voice. "There's a community of narratives waiting to be uncovered, and I need to be both the leader and the listener." Dr. Mitchell nodded, impressed by her resolution. "Then let's create a plan. Identify aspects of your journey that resonate and that you believe will connect with others. We'll work together to develop your platform. You're capable of doing this, embracing who you are and what you want to say." Clara nodded slowly, her mind calculating the steps ahead. The duality of her identity, the experiences of the crawlers, intertwining with her own, sparked a flicker of excitement within her. And yet there was still hesitation. The question loomed: could she withstand scrutiny without losing herself? The urgency grew within, demanding her answer. As the meeting came to a close, she felt the weight of new responsibilities settle onto her shoulders. This was the beginning of something substantial, a transformation she had only once dared to dream about. But darkness still whispered echoes of doubt. Was she truly ready for this heightened visibility? The urgency grew within, demanding her answer. As the meeting came to a close, she felt the weight of new responsibilities settle onto her shoulders. This was the beginning of something substantial, a transformation she had only once dared to dream about. But darkness still whispered echoes of doubt. Was she truly ready for this heightened visibility? Just before saying goodbye, Dr. Mitchell paused, a knowing look crossing his face. "One last thing. Be prepared to confront those who would undermine your journey. The real battle lies in embracing your identity amid external pressures." Clara swallowed hard, a realization dawning on her. The journey ahead wouldn't just be about gathering stories. It would require her to confront her own insecurities head-on, battling the very shadows she wanted to expose in others. As they parted ways, she felt both the weight and the thrill of redefining herself looming before her. With her heart racing, Clara stepped out into the bustling hallway, a renewed sense of purpose flooding her veins. Yet, amid the surge of determination, a single question flickered in her mind, like the flame of a candle. Was she truly ready to confront the shadows that awaited her? Clara's pulse quickened as she navigated the clamorous hallway. Each noise seemed to echo her inner tumult, amplifying the gravity of her new commitments. She paused momentarily, the walls lined with faces moving past her, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing within her. With her breath stabilizing, Clara grappled with the implications of steering discussions she had long only imagined participating in as a bystander. This wasn't merely a chance to share. It was an invitation to lead. She needed to hone her narrative, shaping it into a compelling enough call for connection that would resonate beyond her own story. As she settled into her office, a sanctuary camouflaged with papers and remnants of half-finished projects, she pulled open her notebook, its pristine pages stark against the clutter. The flicker of a pen between her fingers felt precarious, yet necessary. It was time to lay the groundwork, assemble the fragments of her story into a cohesive statement, one that could bear the burden of vulnerability she was about to expose. What moved her? What defined her existence beyond the crawlers? She stared at a blank page, aware of the mental block that threatened her progress, and it festered with accusations of inadequacy. The shadow of doubt wrestled within. She felt her own heartbeat thud in her ears, a reminder of the insecurity she might need to confront head-on. Who was she to speak? Yet with each stroke of her pen, she began murmuring words that shaped her reality. "I have a voice," she scribbled. "I have lived experiences worth sharing." The act of writing wielded power. It gave her clarity. Her identity as a survivor crisscrossed with that of a storyteller, and for the first time she started sketching out an agenda, bullet points effusing with passion. She imagined her first session, an introduction to discuss not just the struggles of the crawlers, but the shared humanity that connected them to a broader tapestry of life. Self-reflection, however, unspooled deeper threads of trepidation. Clara neatly stashed away the scribbled agenda and considered her next steps. The potential experts to invite. Would they regard her narrative with respect or condescension? The prospect of her would-be collaborators conjured unease. Would they see the value in partnering with someone still emerging from the cocoon of uncertainty? With a pang, she recognized the fullness of her transformation. She could not merely resonate with the narratives of the crawlers, she needed to represent herself authentically through their stories. A quiet resolve took shape within her, twining with her ambitions. She would prepare for these potential collaborators by honing her own voice until it sang clear and accurate. Remembering Dr. Mitchell's warning, Clara decided she would not falter when confronted with skepticism. Aiming to prepare for resistance, she considered the specific questions and criticisms that could arise. What if they doubted her qualifications? What if they questioned her ability to hold the space? Every critique felt like an impending wave, and yet she sensed the strength growing within. The walls of her office, once stifling, seemed to echo with possibilities. Armed with resilience, she forged ahead, each keystroke a testament to her intention. She decided to blog anonymously while sculpting her thoughts, a chance to experiment without the weight of identity pressing down. Through this lens, she could navigate self-exploration while quietly redefining her presence, smoothing the edges of her narrative. As evening shadows threaded through her workspace, she leaned back, a hint of satisfaction warming her resolve. She was approachable but formidable, an architect of her own story. And as she prepared to disentangle herself from her fears, Clara discovered a new thrill, an undercurrent of courage swimming beneath the surface of her self-doubt. With renewed clarity glimmering on the horizon, Clara took a deep breath and refocused on her vision. But amidst this burgeoning sense of empowerment, a provocative thought intruded. What would happen when she faced the very first expert she planned to invite? Would the confrontation summon the specters of her insecurity, or transform them into stepping stones for her narrative? So she reopened her notebook, ready to confront those fears and meticulously draft a list of potential speakers. Tomorrow require her to step even further outside her comfort zone, but would she embrace the challenge ahead, both terrifying and exhilarating? Clara awoke to the persistent chime of her alarm, a sound that infused her with both heartbeat and hesitation. This day was pivotal. She had made a decision to invite the first expert, a local journalist who had covered stories about the underserved community with insight and empathy. The weight of her resolve felt heavy, but the possibility ignited sparks of excitement that coursed through her veins. As Clara dressed, her mind danced between confidence and apprehension. The mirror reflected a woman standing on the precipice of her own potential. Yet the doubts began to emerge, shadows creeping into the bright promise of the day. Who was she to invite anyone to discuss these intricate narratives? What if her inexperience overshadowed her intentions? Snapping the final button on her blouse, Clara exhaled slowly, shaking off the burgeoning anxiety. She had already scorned that internal dialogue, deeming it unworthy of the path she was forging. Today, she would not be afraid of the unfamiliar. She'd embrace it instead. Grabbing her notebook, she flipped through the meticulously penned thoughts she had distilled over the past few days. Each phrase served as both a reminder of her journey and a swift kick of motivation. Arriving at the cafe, Clara surveyed the crowd. The scent of coffee mingled with the chatter, yet it hardly permeated her focus. She was keenly aware that in moments like these, self-doubt manifested like an uninvited guest, lurking just at the edge of her consciousness. She wrestled inwardly, reminding herself of the power she wielded in her story. Each life she planned to engage became a facet of the larger experience she aimed to share, not only with others, but with herself. When the door swung open and the journalist stepped in, Clara's stomach knotted. There was an aura of authority about him, a calm centered in the chaos of the cafe that made her question if she could capture his attention. But the determined glint in her eye, reflective of the transformation taking place inside, urged her forward. "Hi," Clara called out, extending her hand warmly, overriding the onset of nerves that threatened to take root. "I'm Clara. Thank you for meeting me." "Nice to meet you, Clara," he replied, his voice steady and open, easing her apprehension just a bit. As they settled into the rhythm of small talk, Clara felt the veil slowly lift, replaced by a galvanizing sense of purpose. Each moment she spent discussing her vision transformed her unease into alignment. She navigated through her plans with practiced eloquence, articulating her aspirations for giving voice to the crawlers. With each sentence, she noticed the journalist's demeanor shift. Curiosity replaced skepticism as he leaned in closer. However, when he posed pointed questions, "What makes your perspective unique?" and "How do you plan to ensure their stories are represented accurately?" Clara could feel the pressing weight of reality pushing against her. Though empowered by her convictions, the fear of exposure clawed at her composure. Instead of shying away, she leaned into the challenge. "Because I am one of them," she asserted, her voice unwavering. "I understand their struggles intimately, not from the outside looking in, but from the inside, living it. And I want to create a space where they can reclaim their narratives alongside their hopes." The journalist considered her words, his gaze piercing yet contemplative. "That's quite a commitment, but how will you respond if they don't want to share?" A silence draped the table, heavy with the gravity of his inquiry. Clara wrestled with the reality of the question, understanding that not every story might be shareable or suitable for public consumption. Moments like these revealed an unexpected truth within her. Through the fear of confrontational dialogue lay the realization of her integrity. Yes, Clara had a responsibility to preserve dignity over sensationalism. She affirmed her intentions to prioritize each story's sanctity above all else. When they wrapped up the discussion, the journalist expressed his genuine interest in collaborating further. For Clara, it felt like a significant validation of her identity as a storyteller and a survivor. As she left the cafe, the exhilarating blend of newfound partnership and looming challenges electrified her thoughts. Each step back reflected the resilience she had been nurturing. She was becoming not just the architect of her narrative, but a champion for others' truths. Yet the lingering question of how she would manage potential conflicts within these narratives loomed larger. She paused outside, inhaling the crisp air, contemplating how to embrace discomfort and embrace growth. Her next challenge awaited. Would she be able to guide other stories without compromising her confidence or integrity? More often than not, the line between vulnerability and leadership can blur. Clara knew she would face this test sooner than later, but her determination remained unshaken. What might she discover when faced with individual stories ripe with unspoken pain? The exhilaration from the cafe meeting buzzed through Clara's mind as she stepped onto the sidewalk. Yet beneath that high hum lingered uncertainty. The path ahead felt both inviting and daunting, woven with threads of promise and conflict. She pulled her notebook from her bag and scanned her notes, eager to reframe her objectives in light of the looming conversations with potential storytellers. Determination coursed through her as she envisioned the vulnerable exchanges to come. Yet, as the chill of the afternoon air brushed against her skin, so too did a wave of apprehension. How could she ensure each life she touched would feel heard, understood, and respected? The stakes were real, each story possessing its own texture of trauma and triumph. In many ways, it wasn't just about narration, it was a matter of trust. Her first visit would be to a local community center where she hoped to connect with the crawlers, those whose lives were filled with unseen threads of struggle and tenacity within the fabric of their daily existence. She mentally rehearsed her approach, deliberating on how to create a safe space amidst the folds of their unshared experiences. Torn between professional strategy and personal empathy, she acknowledged that the balance would require more than mere technique. It demanded deep listening and authenticity. Once she arrived at the center, the vibrant atmosphere pulsated with life. Children's laughter mingled with the low murmur of adults exchanging stories. Each interaction she witnessed served as a reminder of the community she yearned to immortalize. Clara felt the spark of her mission reignite, urging her to dive into the heart of this spirited environment. But as she walked through the center, the realization hit her. The moment she approached a group of individuals, the weight of their potential vulnerabilities would press down on her like a tangible force. Could she genuinely invite them to share tales that were saturated with unfiltered truth? A female voice chimed in, breaking her reverie. "Are you here for the art class?" a woman asked, curiosity laced through her tone. "No, I'm here hoping to speak with some of the crawlers about their stories, to help tell them," Clara replied, conscious of how exposed this admission felt. The woman's expression shifted. "Some don't like sharing their stories with outsiders," she cautioned gently. It was a straightforward reminder of what Clara already feared, how fragile her intentions could be in the face of raw experience. This simple encounter challenged her to reconsider her approach once again. It drove home that sharing a story isn't merely about retrieval. It's about respect and the unyielding bonds of humanity. With a nod of understanding, Clara offered a soft smile. "I understand. I want to make sure their voices matter." As she walked deeper into the center, Clara overheard snippets of conversations, fragments of lives unfolding. A man spoke in a hushed tone about losing everything to addiction, while a woman prepared to mend torn garments while recounting her children's dreams. Each story tugged at something deep within Clara, igniting a sense of urgency. She longed to provide an outlet for expression, but marveled at the responsibility it held. In her heart, a burgeoning conflict solidified. How would she hold space for these encounters? The call to reveal truths danced with the necessity to protect them. Each narrative could transform not just the crawler, but herself as well. Yet vulnerability often extracted an emotional toll. As she approached a quieter corner of the room, Clara caught sight of a small group gathered around a worn table. The tension in the air radiated from their body language, arms crossed, eyes darting. It was here she sensed her next challenge. Would these individuals be willing to let their stories collide with hers? Clara took a deep breath, the conflict of their anticipated tension coursing through her. Her intuition urged her to connect, to lean into that discomfort. But beneath the surface of her confidence, waves of doubt threatened to capsize her resolve. Determined to step, Clara approached them, her heart racing. "Excuse me," she began, her voice echoing with uncertainty yet laced with courage. "I'm here to listen to the experiences that truly matter." As she spoke, she questioned if these vulnerable narratives would strand her at the junction of empathy and responsibility. Would she be able to carry the weight of their truths without getting lost in her own needs for clarity and connection? And just as she felt ready to bridge that gap, a young woman turned to her, eyes clouded with a mixture of anger and fear. "Why should we trust you?" A piercing question that collapsed the air around them. Clara's heart dropped. This was the very moment she dreaded, an immediate challenge to her intentions and integrity. In that moment, she had to respond, not just for the room, but for herself. Could she navigate this critical juncture without losing her resolve? The answers lay just beyond her reach. Clara braced herself, knowing she had only just begun to glimpse the complexities of her journey, whatever direction it would take next. Clara stood frozen, the young woman's question echoing in her mind like the tolling of a bell, stark and unwavering. The instinct to retreat was strong, yet she refused to yield. This was no ordinary interaction. It was a moment that could define her efforts, a critical crossroad that would either ignite trust or potentially deepen suspicion. "Trust must be earned," Clara replied, striving to mask the tremor in her voice with conviction. "I'm here to bear witness, to amplify your stories as they are, not to reshape them." The tension pulsed in the air, thick enough to slice. Yet, instead of retreating or deflecting, Clara made a deliberate choice. She took a step closer. Not too close to invade their space, but enough to signal her earnestness. "I understand the weight of sharing. Every story carries pain and power. If you'll allow me, I want to respect that." For a heart-stopping moment, no one spoke. The group exchanged wary glances as Clara's words hung suspended. Anticipation crackled, and Clara's resolve solidified. This was more than just a conversation. It was the beginning of her own evolution. Slowly, the young woman relaxed the tension in her shoulders and glanced from Clara to her companions. "You sure about that?" Her voice bore the remnants of skepticism, but now shimmered with a flicker of curiosity. "We've been lied to plenty of times." "I'm sure," Clara nodded, her heart racing as the flame of determination flickered inside her. "I'm not looking to provide easy answers or quick fixes. I want to engage in the real, raw dialogue that captures the essence of who you are, no filters." One man at the table, who had remained silent until then, leaned forward. "What do you want from us?" The question was sharp, direct, a challenge that required Clara to delve deeper into her intentions. "I want to listen," she said, her gaze unwavering. "I want to learn what it means for you to navigate your experiences. Your stories matter to me because every person deserves to be seen and heard." In response, the atmosphere eased slightly, but the fragility of the moment remained palpable. Clara felt the weight of the initial conflict shifting, that nervous tension giving way to the potential for connection. Yet, within her, an internal dialogue erupted, spurred by increasing intrigue and doubt. Could she truly handle what lay ahead? Did she possess the emotional fortitude to guide these individuals through the complexities of their narratives? "Okay," said the young woman slowly, her eyes still narrowed, but now with an inkling of openness. "Let's say we give you a chance, but you better be serious about this." "Serious enough to be fearful," Clara replied quietly, the cadence of her voice soothing yet firm. "Fearful of the responsibility that comes with your trust." As Clara settled into the moment, she felt something within her shift. This wasn't just about gathering stories. It was about an impending metamorphosis. Her empathy surged as she leaned into the apprehension, allowing it to fuel her purpose. "Then let's start with the hardest one for you to share. What keeps you awake at night?" she asked, careful to frame her inquiry with genuine curiosity. Her question hung in the air, a vital invitation into the depths of their fears. Clara crossed her fingers, her heart pounding with anticipation as she awaited the response. Then came the silence, but within it, Clara heard the echoes of transformative potential. Their stories were bound to reshape her vision, just as she hoped to reshape their narratives. Would she find the resilience needed to navigate this emotional landscape? As she sensed the walls beginning to lower, the challenge of their truths felt both daunting and exhilarating. And then one voice broke through, quiet but resolute. "Well, I guess we start with the fears," he began hesitantly, a ripple of vulnerability traversing the table. Clara clenched her notebook, ready to absorb, but unsure of the emotional territory she would traverse. As the first words spilled forth, she felt like she was unearthing a treasure trove of human experience, each revelation pregnant with implications. Opening the door to their fears, Clara realized she was no longer just a conduit for their stories. She was becoming a part of them. But deep within her, questions churned. Could she truly navigate the emotional labyrinth of their lives while safeguarding her own psyche? She understood that vulnerability was a two-way street, yet as the first tale began to unfold, the path ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty. And as if sensing a shift in the atmosphere, one of them locked eyes with Clara and asked point blank, "But what do you fear most?" In an instant her mind whirled. A new challenge had emerged. The facade of her professional detachment was beginning to crack. Could she reveal her own fears while inviting them to share their truths? The moment had arrived for her to confront her own narrative, just as she was inviting them to confront theirs. Clara inhaled deeply, the question igniting a series of thoughts that spiraled into a rapid succession of emotions. Her gut instinct screamed to fortify her walls, to retreat back into the relative safety of her role as observer. But in that instant, faced with their vulnerability and a keen desire for reciprocity, she understood the path to mutual understanding began with honesty. "What do I fear most?" she repeated softly, allowing the weight of the question to resonate in the space shared among them. "I fear being unheard. I fear that in my quest to help you share, I might falter and misrepresent your lives. That despite my best intentions, I won't truly connect your stories to the broader narrative that society often dismisses." A murmur of recognition rippled through the group. Each face reflected a mingling of surprise and understanding. Clara's admission served as a bridge, a commonality between their fears that could weave them closer together. The young woman who had initially questioned her drew back slightly, eyes softening. "You're afraid of failing us too?" "Yes," Clara acknowledged, her voice steady yet tinged with vulnerability. "Just as you've faced hardships, I'm afraid of inadequately grasping your realities. I want to honor your stories, not just tell them." As the words left her mouth, Clara felt a weight lift. She was no longer just a face among them, but a participant in a shared emotional geography. The dynamic shifted palpably, with the room enveloped in an atmosphere of newfound camaraderie. "Okay then," the woman said with a hint of a smile, the tension easing further. "Let's see how we can tell our truths together." The floodgates opened. The man who had spoken initially leaned forward, compelled to share his story, one that rang true to the struggles of survival. With every word that came forth, Clara felt the impact of their experiences sink in, revealing a tapestry rich with pain, resilience, and the indelible will to succeed against the odds. Clara engaged deeply, asking probing questions and allowing pauses for reflection, letting the weight of silence accompany their confessions. Their narratives began to intertwine. Stories of loss, adaptation, and hope catalyzed her own understanding. She was not just aiding them in telling their tales, she was an intricate part of their fabric, stitching her own narrative into theirs. As the conversation unfolded, Clara found herself reclaiming agency over her insecurities, affirming her place within this shared journey, The vulnerability she had initially feared morphed into a source of power. Each story revealed the depth of human experience, and through that lens, she could see connections, shared struggles, and intertwined destinies. After hours of meaningful dialogue, she glanced around the table. Laughter broke out sporadically amid the tears, a testament to the catharsis that unveiled itself. The energy swelled as they opened up further, and Clara saw in their eyes not just the remnants of their struggles, but sparks of hope. They were finding strength in each other, and their stories were beginning to unfurl like blossoms in the warm sunlight. She sensed the profound shift in her own perspective, a mastery of her emotions as she soaked in every revealing moment shared around that table. They had journeyed through trepidation to a place of acceptance. It was a testament to her growth. At that moment, Clara no longer saw herself just as a scholar or historian. She was a storyteller. "I think we've built something important here," she remarked, breathing in the atmosphere of connection. "Our stories reflect not just our pasts, but also how we see our futures. Together, we're reshaping narratives." The young woman nodded, gratitude etched in her features. "You give us a chance to show the world the truth, our truth." That night, as Clara stood at her window, watching the streetlights flicker like stars igniting the evening, she felt more aligned with herself than ever before. This was the affirmation she sought, not simply in scholarly circles, but in the pulsing heart of humanity itself. She had achieved something profound. The journey was ongoing, but Clara found comfort in the knowledge that she had emerged not just as a compiler of other stories, but as a formidable voice alongside them. Her fear had become a catalyst, empowering her to forge connections that allowed both her and the crawlers to find their place in the narrative of community, survival, and triumph. Clara was ready to take the next step. She had an idea, a community symposium to celebrate the narratives they had woven together. It sat at the tip of her mind, waiting to burst forth, the culmination of her growth and newfound clarity. Looking back on the distance she traveled, Clara recognized the stark contrast from where she started. She once battled against her family's dreams, grappling with self-identity and aspirations layered in doubt. But now, with confidence solidified through each exchanged story, she saw herself firmly grounded in her new reality, ready and resolute to share these transformative experiences with the world. And as dawn's light began to edge into the sky, Clara smiled. She was no longer just a voice in the shadows. She was a luminary, confident in revealing the extraordinary tales that had become her own. So now, we invite you, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Comment your reactions and theories about Clara's journey. We want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Join Clara's mission into the heart of authenticity.